Jeremy Strong, the 100-mile-an-hour dog. I'm reading with my dog and I'm reading chapter 2 today. I watched this film about a tank battle once. There were all these invincible armour-plated tanks. There was even bazooka-proof. The heroes were losing, of course, until Colonel Cleverclogs, well, I forgot his real name, came up with this brilliant plan. We must use the tank's own strength against itself, he said. If it's impossible for a shell to get through all that armour plate, it must be impossible for a shell to get out. We shall blow them up from the inside. And that is exactly what they did. Brilliant film. Well, Dad didn't like it, of course. He doesn't like noisy action films with lots of explosions. He prefers watching golf. But have you ever seen exciting golf? I reckon golf would be a lot more fun if there was a couple of tanks playing and a few explosions. It would be quite interesting to see a nice big tank rumble across the garden green, square up on the tee, lift its powerful barrel and shoot golf balls right across the golf course. So, what has all this got to do with Streaker? Well, I spent ages trying to work out the very best way of dealing with the dog. I asked myself, what does Streaker do best? There were several answers to this. Make a pig of herself. Dig huge holes in the garden. Smell. But I reckoned that the one thing really shone about Streaker was speed. Streaker was a rocket on 4 legs. Maybe I could see her fantastic speed to my own ends, and that was when I remembered my roller skates. I hadn't used them for months, hadn't seen them for months. All I had to do was hang on to Streaker's lead, and that way she would get exercised and I would get a free ride. You've got to admit, pretty jammy. Mum and Dad didn't think of it though. Mum sat at the lunch table in silence, eating her 99% fat-free yoghurt that tasted just like washing up liquid water. She obviously wasn't impressed. She didn't think of much of the yoghurt either. I know your clever ideas, Trevor, said Dad. They never work. They do, I protested. Look what happened when you tried to build an assault course in your bedroom. Parents have this amazing way of bringing your most spectacular failures into general conversation, don't they? I could feel myself turning bright red. This wasn't my fault. I didn't know that fixing a squiddly bit of rope to the ceiling would bring all the plaster down. Dad grunted, and Mum pushed the remains of her yoghurt across the table. Would you like to finish it for me? She asked. Why do you keep trying to poison me? I wanted to know. Mum gave me a wan smile and chewed the end of a celery stick. I was determined to prove them wrong. I launched a major expeditionary search into the bowels of my wardrobe and eventually managed to find both my roller skates. I spun the wheel and they gave off a very satisfying whoosh. How could this plan fail? I kept Streaker tied to the gatepost while I put on my skates. Then I carefully unwound the lead from the gate, wrapped it around one wrist and crouched low behind her. Okay, Streaker, lift off. She hardly needed any encouragement. Her front paws churned away just like they do in cartoons, and they were off. With Streaker's ears streaming out behind her like jet trails, I was amazed by her strength and speed. Even pulling me didn't prevent her. From quickly reaching something that felt like Mach 1, her legs pounded the pavement and she barked happily as we flew along. She loved it. I simply held on to the lead, the wind racing through my hair. We skidded round the corner in great style and Streaker headed up the main road towards the street market. I reckoned it was probably time to slow down a bit. But of course, I didn't have brakes and neither did she. Anyhow, by this time Streaker had switched to turbo boost and there was no stopping her. We hit the market at maximum speed, shattering shoppers in every direction. I held on for dear life as we zigzagged through the startled crowd, careering wildly from one side to another. It was all I could do to keep upright. Streaker suddenly swerved violently to one side to avoid mesmerising an old lady. I had to fling out one arm as a counterbalance and somehow I managed to get her handbag stuck on it. Help! I've been robbed! Stop that boy! He's taken my bag! In no time at all, the whole market seemed to be after me, but there was no way I could just stop and explain. Streaker was really enjoying herself. There's nothing she likes more than a great game of chase. She doesn't care if she's being chased or she's chasing. We went screaming around those corners so fast that my skates were starting to smoke. We lurched into stalls, sending them tumbling over and spilling contents this way and that way. We crashed into people, we bounced off them. All the time the crowd behind us was getting bigger and bigger and noisier and noisier. "Stop that boy," they shouted. "He's stolen the lady's bag. I mean, the old lady's bag. I mean, the old bags lady. Get the bag snatcher." Streaker whizzed round the next corner so fast that she rolled over and over. And of course, I just carried straight on, smashing headlong into a rack of dresses. Before I knew it, I was hauled to my feet by a very angry mob. Not only was I clutching the old lady's handbag, but I had rather stunning flower print sundress draped over my shoulder. To cut a long story short, I was carted off down the police station, along with Streaker. She sat attentively in the corner and looked completely innocent, while I was almost arrested. And just to make matters worse, the policeman on the desk was Duty Sergeant Smug. He lives just up the road from us, and he's got 3 Alsatians. Personally speaking, I think an Alsatian is a bit too much. But 3? Sergeant Smug rang home, and Dad had to come and get us. He was not pleased. And not just because he'd been dragged away from his nice kip on the sofa. Dad caught Sergeant Smug cheating in a golf match last summer, and they've been at war with each other ever since. I explained how it was all a big accident. It was Streaker's fault. Sergeant Smug looked at the ceiling and rolled his eyes. "Of course," he said. "I should have known. The dog did it. The dog stole the handbag." "That wasn't what I meant," I said, and I tried to explain about the roller skates and being towed and everything. Sergeant Smug just laughed silently. You know, a sort of ha 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 ha, how do you expect me to believe that kind of a laugh. Dad was getting more and more annoyed at having his time wasted. "It was quite obvious that Trevor is telling the truth, Mr. Smug," he snapped. "He's hardly likely to make up such a ridiculous story. Clearly it was the dog's fault. She's like it all the time." The policeman looked across at Streaker, who was sitting there angelically. "Sergeant Smug, if you do mind, mister," he insisted, "and you can hardly blame the poor dog for all this." At that point, the poor dog suddenly came to life. Streaker leapt up, raced across the room, launched herself onto the sergeant's desk, scattering everything on it like 4 winds, and threw herself cheerfully into Dad's lap, despite the fact that he was standing up. They both fell into a large heap on the floor, and Streaker proceeded to give Dad's ears a really good clean out. "What did she do that for?" demanded Sergeant Smug. "No idea at all," Dad answered. From 4 level. "I told you, she's like this all the time." Sergeant Smug frowned and shook his head. "Your dog is loopy. She needs a dog psychiatrist." And he let us go home. I won't bore you with all the things that Dad said on the way back, but most of them carried threats of instant death. So, my first plan had proven spectacularly unsuccessful. Maybe it was time to call in reinforcements. So I decided to go and see my very best friend, Tina.